Hello, I'm Bas Hamer, and welcome to the 5th tutorial for the Possum Labs DSL project. Today we'll be talking about how you can use multiple browsers in one test. So, we abstracted a lot of the browser away for you, and that can make it a little bit harder to figure out, like, well, what happens when I want to do something that requires two browsers? For instance, this is the classical race condition of you have one item available in your store, and you have two different browsers that log in, they both add it to their cart, and then one of them checks out. What happens to the second browser that didn't check out first? Right, so what we have for this is called sessions, and we'll take a quick look at the implementation that's necessary for this. And what you can do is you can just switch in between sessions. You don't have to specify when you're clicking what session to use for that particular clicking action. What ends up happening is you switch between the two sessions, and then you can use all the existing steps you already have because of the way that this works. So what we have for this is a session object, and the session controller has some additional functionality in it. So it is a repository, much like any other variable, and this variable contains a WebDriver. So we wrap the WebDrivers each in their own session. When we create a session, and we do actually keep track of it, and the reason we have to keep track of it is one, to dereference it, but also to periodically talk to that session just to keep the drivers alive. Like if you leave a Selenium driver hanging for too long without any command, it times out. And this by default, every 10 seconds, we'll send a command to it. And that keep alive command should return nothing. It's just effectively it's a valid XPath that shouldn't return any data. Just to keep your browser alive, even if you go away from it for a minute or two. The way that we make things work is that we have a abstraction in between the WebDriver and the tests. All the tests address the WebDriver through the WebDriver manager. So that means that if you switch out what WebDriver the WebDriver manager is using, you can effectively switch out what WebDriver all your steps that follow are talking to. And that's exactly what we do in here. So we have this check drivers code, right? This is doing just making sure that all the drivers are still up and running. And we just get the URL to keep everything happy and alive. And we have our factory method on how we want to create our driver. And then when we actually switch sessions, we find the WebDriver manager and we just set the current driver. That's really all that we do. Right? When we create them, we make sure that we create additional WebDrivers. We keep track of them, we keep them alive, and then we have this step here to switch between them. And that's pretty much all of the magic that's involved in utilizing multiple browsers in a single test, making it pretty easy to create some very complicated scenarios, and also making it easy, or sometimes even faster, to run scenarios where it's just convenient to have two users logged in. So for instance, user 1 is logged in, user 2 is the administrator, and kills the access for user 1. What happens to user 1 in that scenario? Right? What can they still do in the application? Do you have the ability to cancel access for a user in your system? Those types of scenarios are very difficult to do unless you have multiple browsers running at the same time, and this is built to help you support that. So you do have to create this sessions object for this to work. It's not available to you out of the box, but the same source code will probably work for your project. You can just copy paste it out of the tutorials. It's just not something that is generic enough to make it part of the default English package. Please let me know if you have any feedback or questions on how this works or how you can utilize it. And yeah, I thank you for your attention. And this wraps up the final of the planned web tutorials. There's going to be some tutorials on some advanced topics after this, and those will follow next. Thank you very much for your time.